Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to our program on Kardec Radio.
Welcome to the messengers in our home. Dear Kardec Radio listeners, here we are again with the messengers in our home. Tonight we're going to talk about chapter 24, Ismalia's prayer. Hello Mackenzie.
Hi Francisca, and hello everyone. Welcome back to another chapter of the messengers in our home.
So before we start, we would like to invite you for our opening prayer. If you can, you could close your eyes. And let's all elevate our thoughts to the higher spheres. Taking a deep breath in and a long breath out. Dear Mother, Father God, Creator of the universe and of our yet small hearts, we praise you for the greatness of your creation, the mysteries of the universe, and the beauty of nature, the gift of life we all have received, and all the blessings we receive in our everyday life, the big ones and the small ones. We are especially grateful tonight for our power to co-create and receive, thanks to you, one of your children or more into our hearts, into our families, so that we can learn to love more. We thank you for the opportunity of being gathered all over the world to learn more about life in the spiritual realm and how it is connected to our lives right here, right now on earth. And in tonight's lesson, we especially will learn more about the effects and the power of Ismalia's prayer, which is our possibility to talk to you like we're doing right now. We would also like to welcome the spiritual benefactors of Kardec Radio and thank them for their constant love and support, for their inspiration, and for helping us understand the lessons we discuss every week. And with your permission, we would like to start our meeting. So be it. So let us now listen to the reading of chapter 24. Enjoy.
Chapter 24. Ismalia's Prayer. Within a few moments, we rejoined the rest of the group. The administrator made a luminous signal in the shape of a triangle, and I noticed that all the co-workers stood up in a posture of respect. "It's prayer time at the aid station," said Alfredo, to let us know exactly what was occurring. The sun had disappeared from the sky, but the entire celestial canopy still reflected the golden disk. Twilight tones filled the surroundings with marvelous light effects that were highly visible to us now because Alfredo, although I didn't understand why, had ordered all the artificial lights to be turned off before the prayers. As a result, the darkness became very intense amidst the pavilions, but bathed in sublime tonalities. The sky up above took on a new appearance, and because of that immense illuminated blue roof, we had the impression that we were in a marvelous palace. Deeply impressed, I tried to get closer to the small group of fellow spirits. Only a few women from the castle's work staff remained with us as though to offer honorable company to the noble Ismalia. The other men and women remained at their posts not far from the mummified creatures. I noticed that, although Aniceto had been asked to lead the prayer, he excused himself, arguing that the position rightfully belonged to Alfredo's devoted wife. Ismalia, in an indefinably refined gesture, began to pray, silently accompanied by the rest of us. We followed her plea, phrase by phrase, mindful of the recommendations of our guide, who had advised us to repeat each phrase in our own minds in order to impress the maximum rhythm and harmony onto her words, both sound and idea, in a single vibration.
Lord,
Ismalia began,
please deign to assist our humble words by sending us the light of your sanctifying blessings. We are here, ready to do your will, sincerely determined to serve your high intentions. With us, Father, our brothers and sisters still asleep, anesthetized by the spiritual denial to which they yielded while in the world. Awaken them, Lord, if it be your wise and merciful will. Awaken them from their sorrowful and unhappy sleep. Awaken them to responsibility, to the idea of righteous duty. O magnanimous King, have pity on your suffering subjects. Compassionate Creator, lift up your fallen creatures. Righteous Father, forgive your unfortunate children. Let the dew of your infinite love fall on our humble aid station. May your will be done rather than ours. But if possible, Lord, may our patience receive a life-giving ray from the sun of your goodness.
Ismalia's voice pierced the depths of my heart. Watching her for a moment, I noticed that she had become transfigured. Diamond-like lights radiated from her entire body, especially her chest area, whose core looked like it held the glow of a mysterious lamp. During a brief pause in her prayer, I looked around and noticed that the rest of us were displaying the same phenomenon, although less intensely. Each one of us seemed to display a luminous manifestation to some degree. The women accompanying Ismalia looked almost exactly like her, as if they were wearing splendid, radiant garments predominated by the color blue. Behind them, Aniceto's light blazed, a surprising lilac color. Then, Alfredo's light, a soft and subtle green, but not too splendorous. Then, behind him, were a few workers displaying sublime brilliancy on their foreheads, expressed in a variety of colors. Then, Vicente and myself. We displayed a weak luminosity, which, nevertheless, filled us with intense joy, considering that most of the other co-workers displayed only dark bodies like those in the physical realm. In a deliberate and moving voice, Ismalia continued,
Here with us, O Lord, are unfortunate mothers who were unable to discover the sublime meaning of faith, falling imprudently into the precipice of sinful indifference. Fathers who were unable to overcome materiality during the course of their human existence, incapable of discerning the beautiful mission you had entrusted to them. Couples unhappy because they did not understand your kindly and generous laws. Youngsters who gave themselves over, body and soul, to the suggestions of illusion. Many became bogged down in the quagmire of crime, worsening their onerous debts. Now they sleep, Father, waiting for your holy intentions. But we know, O Lord, that this sleep does not bring rest to their minds. Nearly all of our patients are victims of terrible nightmares for having forgotten your commandments of love and wisdom while in the material world. Although they appear to be immobile, their spirit moves amongst anguishing afflictions that we sometimes cannot fathom. It is they, Father, your wandering children and our companions in struggle, who need your fatherly hand to guide their way. Almost all have strayed from the straight and narrow due to suggestions of ignorance, which, like a giant spider, weaves its webs of misery, entangling destinies and hearts. Entreating your mercy for them, we also implore for ourselves the true sense of universal fraternity. Teach us to cross the barriers that separate us, so that we may see in each of these unfortunate ones a brother or sister in need of our understanding. Help us to understand, so that we may finally lose every impulse to judge others on the byways of life. Teach us to love them as Jesus loved us. Lord, we who beseech you here were also spiritual lepers, blind of understanding, paralyzed of will, prodigal children of your love. In times past, we also slept in the aid station of your mercy. We are simple debtors, eager to pay off our immense debts. We know that your goodness never fails, and we trustingly wait for your blessing of life and light.
Ismalia paused again, longer this time. I dried my eyes, damp from sobbing. A gentle warmth, however, swept over my soul. This new sensation of comfort was so intense that I ceased to focus on myself so that I could look around me. Gazing instinctively upward, I was amazed to see a large quantity of whitish flakes of many different sizes falling copiously on those of us who were praying, but not on those who were sleeping. I had the impression that they were spilling from heaven upon our heads, falling in the same abundance over everyone, from Ismalia down to the least of the workers. I couldn't contain my wonder as yet another phenomenon caught me by surprise. The light flakes disappeared when they touched us, but from our foreheads and chests, great luminous bubbles began to fall, which were the same color as the light with which we were covered. They rose into the air and reached the countless mummies. Even then, I noticed the issue of levels among spirits, in that the light bubbles emitted by Ismalia were more brilliant, intense, and rapid, reaching many of the patients simultaneously. Next came the ones sent out by the women of her personal circle. After that came those of Aniceto, Alfredo, and the others. The dark-bodied workers emitted weak but visibly luminous vibrations. In that instant of contact with the higher plane, everybody revealed their own worth in the work they could offer. Noticing my astonishment, Aniceto whispered in my ear. In prayer, we encounter the advanced production of power elements. Although they come from providence in equal amounts for all those who give themselves to the divine work of intercession, each spirit has a different capacity for receiving them. This capacity is the result of the individual's efforts at striving to reach the higher planes. And since God helps humans through other humans and assists souls through other souls, each one of us can only help our fellow beings and cooperate with the Lord by using the evolutionary qualities that we have already attained in life. And so, as we go on with the reading and studying of our book, tonight we reach chapter 24, Ismalia's Prayer. We already heard the reading of the chapter, and I hope that you've been following us, because naturally we've been going from chapter to chapter, and last week we read and we discussed chapter 23, where we had a very brief look on some of those spirits who are in the aid station and that they apparently are sleeping. And we had the whole explanation of why they're sleeping, and we had Alfredo and Vicente and Andre and Aniceto talking about those spirits who are sleeping, and unfortunately they are not having very good dreams while they are sleeping. They are having actually nightmares, which was the title of our last chapter. And we finished that chapter by knowing that they were going to have a communal prayer for those who are sleeping. And that's what they're going to do in this very chapter. And we're going to hear, we already heard, we're going to talk a little bit about the prayer that was made for all those who are sleeping at that aid station, which naturally, since you've been following us and reading and studying together with us, you already know that that prayer is not only for those who are sleeping at that very specific moment, but not going too far ahead of ourselves here, I'm not going to say anything else, but I'm going to mention this few minutes from now when we reach the end of this chapter. So what happens is that they start walking and they finally meet together. They join with the rest of the group, and there's the signal where everybody is going to get ready for the prayer, for the prayer of the day or of the night. And Alfredo says, well, it's prayer time at the aid station. And Andre goes to describe what's happening there. And there's something that I find very, very interesting in his descriptions. That, well, he says that it's night. He describes that the sun had disappeared, but still the celestial canopy reflected the golden disk, and there were the twilight tones filled the surroundings with a lot of marvelous light effects that they were highly visible to us. Because, and that's where I find it very interesting, and I'm going to make a few comments on this throughout the program tonight. He says, Andres says that he didn't understand why Alfredo ordered that all the artificial lights to be turned off before the prayer. And then, as a result, he goes on, says darkness became very intense, in the pavilions. But because of that exterior light, the natural light, right, the sky up above took on a new appearance, and because of that immense illuminated blue roof, they all had the impression that they were in a marvelous palace. And what I find interesting about this description here is that we could only perceive the natural brilliance, the natural tonality of the sky. We could only see the stars, let's say it this way, once we had all the artificial lights turned off, right? And this has something very deeply connected with the prayer that we are going to hear through Ismalia's voice, right? And to which marvelously spoken by Francisca in our reading of the chapter. So I'm not sure if you're following me, but what I want to say is the most important light that comes, that bathes us, is not generated artificially. It needs to be generated intimately, naturally. And that's what we hear, and that's what we see in this whole chapter, is that once the artificial lights are off, we can clearly see the ones who already have their own natural lights coming from the natural Father, right? From the Creator. So, but I'm not going to spend too much time in this because we have so much to talk about Ismalia's prayer in itself. Otherwise, I will be talking too much of things that I don't deem to be very, very important, other than what Ismalia says, which is really for the intimacy of ourselves. And naturally, I'll be coming back and talking a little bit more about this light stuff, this artificial light versus natural light. And then Andres says, deeply impressed by the situation, by the lighting of the atmosphere of the environment. He's deeply impressed, and he tried to get closer to the small group of fellow spirits. So it is interesting because it is his impulse of getting closer to the light, right? Of approaching those who are doing the best part of the biggest part of the job, right? The ones who are closer to Ismalia, and that they are that group of fellow spirits. So it's my effort, right? My own effort of becoming closer to those who are actually actively working for the good, working for the better. And the question that comes to me at this point is, when I see people that are working for the good, what is my impulse, right? What do I want to do? Do I want to get closer to them so that I can be bathed also in that light that's being generated? Or am I still of the kind that, oh no, let them there, I'm here, I'm not worthy of this, I'm not going to make any effort? Or how am I in that movement in life, right? In those types of works, in those types of work, in those type of situation. So Andre is showing us, let's get closer to the ones who work, but not just to watch, but to do something. And that's what he's been trying to do. That's what he's been doing together with Vicente, and we are following them in this path, in this journey. So a lot of the other workers stayed at their posts, but some of them, and he says only a few women from the work staff, right, approached Ismalia to offer honorable company to her, and the other ones stayed outside. So who am I, right? Am I the ones who stay at the post, which is natural, no problem, you're at your post doing your work? Or am I one who already achieved a different level? They're all honorable, right? In their own way, in their own regard, in their own time. We have to go through all the steps to reach higher levels, which is natural. So it is interesting to see that there are different steps that we can take, that where we are in the ladder of evolution, right? And here we see, and since we already heard the whole reading of the chapter, we know the difference among these workers, right? Including Aniceto, Alfredo, Ismalia herself, these women who were close to her, the other workers, Vicente, Andre, and so on. So somebody asked Aniceto to lead the prayer, but he said, no, I can't do this. I'm just a visitor, and the position rightly belongs to Ismalia. She is the one who at this very moment, right, she is the one who needs to lead that prayer. She is the woman, or the spirit. Here is she's a woman, right? The spirit is a female spirit in this sense, or in this the gender that she assumes at this moment is of a female. But it's not because she is a female, or the spirit is female or male. It's because of the superiority, or the moral superiority that she already achieved, and she is there visiting, and she is not always there. So Alfredo, or Aniceto, says no. It's Ismalia's time, because, and that's where I think it's very interesting to bring back again the idea of the names of people, and in this case, very specifically, Ismalia's name, right? Because if we remember in a few chapters ago, maybe chapter 17, more or less, I think I mentioned that Ismalia, the name Ismalia, comes from Hebrew, and the meaning of this word would be God will hear. So it is very interesting that at this specific moment, Aniceto says, no, Ismalia is the one to lead the prayer. She is the one to rightfully lead this prayer. Maybe Aniceto knows, right, that God will hear her prayer, which is a very interesting way for Andre to write this, because because of what will happen in next chapter, right, in chapter 25, which I'm not going to enter into it right now, since we're going to hear and talk about it next week. But so Ismalia, will pray for all those who are there at the aid station, and her name means God will hear. We will see if God will hear, right? In this chapter already, we will see if God will hear, but we will also see it in our next chapter also. So Ismalia then starts to pray. Andre describes what he sees, and he sees that she is very sweet, right? Has a refined gesture, and began to pray, and everybody was following her lead, silently accompanying her. And they followed her plea phrase by phrase, because, and we didn't hear this, Andre is telling us this right now, Alfredo told them that they would need to do that, mindfully accompany Ismalia's plea, repeating mentally each phrase, and I'm quoting here, in our own minds, in order to impress the maximum rhythm and harmony onto her words, as if we were building up a song or a lyric, right? As if we are mentalizing the same idea and circling it over and over in a single vibration. However, what is more important here is it is that this is not just because of the sound. This is not just because of the repetition or the mere, following the rhythm and following the harmony. But we need to remember, and that's what he says here, both sound and idea. So we need to feel the rhythm and feel the harmony, sound-wise and idea-wise. So we need to understand, to be mindful of the meaning of the prayer, not only about the sound of the words, of the rhythm of the words, of the harmony of the ideas, but also of the meaning of the ideas, deeply feeling what she is invoking in her plea. And then she starts, right? And we heard the prayer. I'm not going to repeat the whole prayer here, which is really beautiful in its meaning and also the wording that Ismalia, used to send her plea, or their plea, to God Himself. But it's going to be very hard to skip some parts here, but naturally we can't go word by word. Otherwise, that will take a lot of time to comment everything. But I'm going to go through some of the ideas that she wants us to really understand and to feel, right? It's not just a matter of reasoning only, but also a matter of heart, of really feeling deep inside what she wants us to understand. And she wants us to understand how we pray, what we pray for, if we're going to receive what we are asking for, how are we going to receive, how do we regard God's will over our prayer. So it's all inside this prayer, right? So she starts by putting herself in, by putting not only herself but ourselves, and imagine that we are there. Hopefully we don't imagine ourselves there, as we said last week, as being one of those who are asleep, but as being one of those who are awake and trying to and making an effort to help those who are asleep. So, Lord, she starts, please deign to assist our humble words by sending us the light of your sanctifying blessings. So, we are humble. We are a humble group of people here, asking you to send us your light, the light of your sanctifying blessings. And we are here, ready to do your will. So it's not our will, it's not what we want, but what you want us to do, to serve your high intentions. Naturally, is my choice, but hopefully I will be illuminated, right, by this light of your sanctifying blessings to do what you want us to do. And together here, Father, with us are our brothers and sisters, and she will repeat this later on, right, that are still asleep, as if they are received some anesthetics because they spiritually denied, what they needed to do in the world. And please, Lord, awaken them, make them get out of their sleep, of those nightmarish dreams that they are having, and awaken them from their sorrowful and unhappy sleep. Awaken them to what? And then she says, to responsibility, to the idea of righteous duty. Not only to awaken them so that they can fall over again over the same mistakes. Do not awaken us if we are still not ready to perform what you want us to do. To assume and to learn that we have the responsibility of fixing the debts that we committed, that repaying the debts that we committed, of fixing the mistakes that we performed in the past. Breaking stuff that didn't need to be broken, so that we can take responsibility of what we did in the past. And then she calls God through three different expressions, right? She calls him magnanimous King, compassionate Creator, and righteous Father. It is interesting because what she is doing here, remember, she is not talking only to spirits, right, on the spiritual realm. It's not just because I died that if I'm not a spiritist, I will become a spiritist. No, right? Once I die, if I were a Catholic, if I were a Protestant, and I recognize myself as an immortal spirit, I will still hold the same beliefs, and I will call God the way I called God before. So what she is doing here is that she's evoking the ideas and the images that I have, that I might have from God. So we call God a king, right? Asking him to have pity on the suffering subjects. That's usually how a king refers to those who are under his rule, right? So that's what she is doing here. And then compassionate Creator, I know that you are the Creator and you are the compassionate Creator, right? And in Islam, for example, they call God the compassionate one, right? Sometimes. And Father, right? Just like Christ used to call God, Father, right? Of a dad, right? Abba, right? It's a righteous, right? The most revered one, or the one that's the best, right? The good one. So forgive your unfortunate children. So she asks in three different ways for three different things, using three different expressions for God: Father, King, and Creator. Lift up your fallen creatures. So she is really putting herself into the position of those who call God by different names, right? We could call God a woman. We could call God a thing. We could call God a force of nature. It doesn't matter. God doesn't mind what or who we call him or her by this name or by that name. Only if we call him through a position of love, of faith, of the idea of, oh, I was created. Whatever created me, whoever created me, if it's God or if it's not God, if I call God Allah, power of nature, nature itself, Mother God, Mother Nature, it doesn't matter. Once I recognize that I'm humble, that I was created, and that I'm pleading to God for something, not only for me, but for others, this is what matters. And this makes the connection between me and God, me and the magnanimous King, me and the compassionate Creator, me and the righteous Father. And then she goes, let the dew of your infinite love fall on our humble aid station. This is the aid station where these spirits came for us to help them. But let these things, let your love, right, the dew of your infinite love fall on our humble aid station. But may your will be done rather than ours. I want your will to be done, right? But if possible, and here is something that's very, very important. I want you to do whatever necessary, and it's the right thing to do through me. But I'm pleading with love for those who are here suffering in our hands, that if possible, Lord, if it is not against your will, if it is not against your laws, may our patients receive a life-giving ray from the sun of your goodness. So it is not that we cannot ask, it is not that we cannot wish, it is not that we cannot desire for something good to happen, but we always need to remember that whatever happens, it needs to come from the will of the Father, because if we go against the will of God, of the Creator, something is not going to end up as good or as well as we would wish it to. So this is the very first part, the end of the first part of her prayer. Naturally, she goes on and she keeps praying, right? She stops for a while, probably just to mentalize, and she's just thinking and not saying anything out loud so that everybody can have their own time to say their own words. Meanwhile, in this very brief stop, what happens is Andre starts to describe what was going on, right? And then we stop here just to go with Andre to see what was going on while Ismalia was praying, was doing that initial part of the prayer. And he says that Ismalia's voice pierced the depths of his heart. Watching her, he opened his eyes, or had his eyes open, and he was seeing her, and he noticed that she had become transfigured, that lights were radiating, right? Diamond-like lights radiated from her entire body, especially her chest area, right? Showing that her prayer was not coming only from her mind, from her brain. It's not just a rationalizing of an idea, but the idea is feeling. She is feeling the idea. She is just saying the words that are really coming out, as we usually say in our figure of expression, coming from the heart, right? She is actively sensing and feeling what she is saying. It is not just a word mumbling, right? We have a speech and then we read the speech and we don't feel what the speech really wants to convey. Now, On the contrary, she was feeling every word that she was saying. The idea of love was entrenched in the words that she was pronouncing. And that's what's important, and that's why it's so intense. That's why the effects of this prayer that she says is so powerful, right? Naturally, it's not only her prayer, but remember what Andres said in the beginning. It's everybody in the same rhythm, and everybody trying to get to the same idea, following the rhythm, the harmony, and feeling the idea, right? Getting soaked into the love that she is emitting through her post-pounding words, but not only the physical words, but the idea behind those words. And she was radiant, right? As if she was, as if she had that glow inside herself of a mysterious lamp. Oh, let's stop here. Andres said that the artificial lights were turned off, and now he mentions a lamp, right? A mysterious lamp inside herself. Okay, the artificial lights are off on the outside. Now, through the prayer, through the love that she's putting into her words, there is a mysterious lamp lighting up inside herself. It's a natural light. He calls it a lamp so that maybe we can have this connection between the artificial from the beginning and now this natural, mysterious lamp inside herself. And during that brief pause, Andre looks around to see what was going on. And then he sees that each one of them seemed to display a luminous manifestation to some degree. So it is as if, okay, there's no artificial lights here in the building, but it looks like there's light inside this building now. Where's this light coming from? Whoa, everybody inside of themselves have their own lamps. There's those mysterious lamps. And then he describes, right, that the women, right, that were accompanying Ismalia, they were probably at the same level of Ismalia because they looked like almost exactly Ismalia. Look almost exactly like Ismalia. Bright and splendid, radiant garments, predominated by the color blue. And then Aniceto and Alfredo, lilac color, green color. Some of the works had their own colors, some brilliancy on their foreheads, variety of colors. Vicente and himself displayed a weak luminosity, which is interesting, right? They are starting their work. Only now they are really striving to do their best. Naturally, they are putting oil into their own lamps, and it's a dim light, but which nevertheless filled them with intense joy, because they could see that they are improving, that they are already starting to have their own light. They're being able to receive the blessing of that light that Ismalia starts by asking God, right? When she asks in the very first sentence of her prayer, Lord, please deign to assist your humble words by sending us the light of your sanctifying blessings. And Andre just noticed that, okay, we are here receiving that light, and we are able to share that light, put that light out, not artificially, not illuminating from the outside, but God blessing them with that light that comes from within. Right? And then he has to stop because Ismalia continues her prayer. And then she starts by describing what's the situation that they have at the aid station. And she mentions unfortunate mothers, fathers, couples, and youngsters, which cover everybody, right? Because we are couples. Well, if naturally she talks about when we mention a couple, we are naturally talking about a romantic in some way couple, but married or not married. So we can all be encompassed in this characteristic, right? Basically, all of us will be fathers in life or mothers in life, and if we were not mothers or fathers, we were once, or we still are, youngsters, right? So she encompasses here everybody, right? And asking God to, hey, God, please, see, we have mothers here who committed mistakes. We have fathers here who didn't overcome materiality. We have couples because they didn't understand your kind and generous laws. We also have youngsters who gave themselves over, body and soul, to the suggestions of illusion. And then, unfortunately, many of us bogged down in a quagmire of crime, worsening our onerous debts. And now we sleep, waiting for your holy intentions. But we know, Father, that this sleep that we are into, this sleep does not bring rest to our minds. Here, naturally, Ismalia is doing a prayer for those who are there, sleeping, having the nightmares at the aid station. And we already talked about this in the previous chapter and touched briefly upon the same subject matter in this edition, in this chapter. But I'm going to touch upon it once again. Once we read a book like this, once we are trying to understand a story like this, we have to try to put ourselves into the positions of all the sides, right? We have to put ourselves in the position of Ismalia, who is doing the prayer, of Andre, who is following the prayer, of the nurses, of Aniceto, Alfredo, Vicente, but also in the position of the ones who are receiving the prayer, right? When the prayer are being said to, right? So the question here is, how are we if we put ourselves in the positions, or try to put ourselves in the positions of those who are sleeping? Are we having those nightmares, right? When we sleep, do we rest? Are we sleeping even though we are awakened? How am I doing in this life? Is this prayer, or isn't this prayer also for me? That's the question that I need to make. We are sometimes, because we are still fighting, right, to get out of these bad situations that I put myself in throughout time, committed crimes, maybe and hopefully not in this, or hateful crimes, not in this life, but in previous lives. Who knows, right? What have I committed? Why am I suffering in this life? So may this prayer fall within ourselves, as if we are the ones who need this kind of prayer, so that we awaken, not from those types of nightmares, but from different types of nightmares. Maybe not as horrible, but may we start to move in the right direction. And she says, although these spirits appear to me to be immobile, their spirits move amongst anguishing afflictions that we sometimes cannot fathom. Sometimes we have a friend by our side that we don't know how bad that person is feeling. What are the struggles that that person is going through? And how am I helping? Can I help, right? And if I can't help physically, why can't I pray to God, right, to help them with His light, so that His love and His light can show a little fray, right, where light comes up, and then the person, or us, right, or I, can go out and follow that light. But she goes and she says, "It is they, Father, your wandering children, and our companions in struggle, who need your fatherly hand to guide their way." We are their companions in struggle. Unfortunately, we got entangled in this web. Right? She compares with a giant spider, with webs of misery, entangling destinies and hearts. So we are here to beg your mercy for them, but we also implore for ourselves the true sense of universal fraternity. Teach us to cross the barriers that separate us, so that we may see in each of these unfortunate ones a brother or a sister in need of our understanding. Help us to understand, so that we may finally lose every impulse to judge others on the byways of life. Teach us to love them as Jesus loved us. We really need, as quickly as possible, to understand that everybody that suffers, that everybody that commits crimes in this world, be it a petty crime, be it a heinous crime, that they are our brothers and sisters, and that we need to show love towards them, that we need to not to hate those actions that we see on television, but once we see those acts of violence, of destruction, that we look to those people and say, God, may God bless you. May the light of God fall onto you. You are my brother. You are my sister. I need to learn to love you. Learn to love you is not to be on their side and agree with what the person is doing, rather than to sometimes to bring those people to justice, but not out of revenge, not out of hate, but out of the power of love, of showing that love conquers everything. She goes on, right? We are asking this. We here are asking, are begging, are beseeching you here, because we were also spiritual lepers. We were blind of understanding. We were paralyzed of will. We were prodigal children of your love. We also, in the times past, slept in the aid stations of your mercy. Here we are. Here is Ismalia saying what we should be thinking and feeling. If these spirits are right now sleeping, having nightmares, committing crimes, and we are here able to help them, don't allow us to feel better than they are. Please make us understand that if we have conquered this already, it's just because you allowed me to go on and to conquer this. Because once in the past, we were, and we also slept in the aid stations of your mercy. See how beautiful the feeling of this prayer is. She is relating the aid station that she works in, that she came to visit to help Alfredo and help all those spirits. And she says, Lord, once in the past, or more than once in the past, we also slept in the aid stations of your mercy. So please, Lord, do your own will. But if you can, help us help these people. We are simple debtors, eager to pay off our immense debts. And she finalizes by saying, we know that your goodness never fails, and we trustingly wait for your blessing of life. And she finalizes the prayer with the word light. Turn off the artificial lights that we have from the exterior world, but turn on inside of ourselves the light of love and the light of life, the blessing of life that you give us so that we can help these brothers and sisters of our own. Are we ready to receive this from God? Are we already learning how to pray and how to really feel what we are praying, what we are saying in our prayers? And then that's how she ends her prayer, or at least that's how Andre cuts her prayer off. He says that Ismalia paused again, longer this time. He dried his eyes, them from sobbing, and then he felt the warmth, that light warming up. And then he was so content, he was so comforted. And instead of focusing in himself, he decided to look up. And when he looks up, he sees something falling from the skies, right? And those whitish flakes following them. And when they touched the spirits who were praying at the time, those flakes just simply disappeared. No, those flakes were not touching the ones who were sleeping, only the ones who were praying, actively praying. And it was the same amount of flaking that was following over every single one of those who were praying, from Ismalia to the least, to the smallest of the ones of the workers. It doesn't matter. The blessings of life and light from God fall upon us at the same quantity. And he is astonished once again by what he sees after that. Every single spirit who were praying, their chests and their foreheads, from their chests and from their foreheads, great luminous bubbles began to fall. The flakes were falling from sky. They touched all the spirits, and once they touched and they were absorbed, from those spirits and from each of those spirits, the workers, Ismalia, Alfredo, and Iseto, bubbles were being formed and were falling from them. And those bubbles had a specific kind of color, the color that each one of those spirits had. And they rose into the air and were going through and approaching the bodies of those spirits who were sleeping. But then something really interesting happens. He says that the bubbles that were coming out of those spirits who were praying, of the workers who were praying, they were not the same size. They were smaller in ones and bigger, rapid, more brilliant in other people, like Ismalia, like the women who were around Ismalia. Those spirits who were more elevated, more spiritually elevated, more devoted to the work of the good, they had more powerful, if we can say this, more powerful bubbles that were going farther and reaching more mummies, more of those spirits who were sleeping at that moment. But it's interesting, and he says, in that instant of contact with the higher plane, everybody revealed their own worth in the work they could offer. So we receive from God, everybody receives the same quantity, and we offer something from that. And that offering, it's what I can offer. So it's not that God gives more or less to somebody. It's that we are not able, probably because we don't have practice enough, because we didn't get in contact with the higher spheres as other people can, because of practice, because of their being touched by the profoundness of the gospel, of the message of love that Jesus brings to us. And then because Andre is astonished, Aniceto comes and speaks very lowly, whispering in his ear. And then he says that in prayer we find the production of power elements. They come from providence. They come from God in equal amounts. We pray, we are praying together. Those power elements come to all of us the same way. But each spirit has a different capacity for receiving them. Why? Oh, it's because I'm bigger or because I'm thinner? No, it's the spirituality. And then he explains it like this. This capacity is the result of the individual's efforts at striving to reach the higher planes. It's not that I already got there, but because I'm willing to go the distance, because I'm putting myself into the road that leads to that place, making efforts, striving to be the best, striving to follow what Jesus taught me, striving to follow God's will. And then he finalizes, Aniceto finalizes by saying what we already know, right? God helps humans through other humans and assists souls through other souls. That's what they're doing there, right? They are souls, they are spirits trying to help other spirits. God is not going straight into them. I am willing to help God, so God will give me the opportunity of helping. I am in contact with God, so I will do God's will, and then I will make what I need to do of God's work, if I'm willing to submit to this power of God, to the power of love. And each one of us, he ends up, can only help our fellow beings and cooperate with God by using the evolutionary qualities that we have already attained in life. Oh, I want to help my daughter. I want to help my son in his mathematical problems or in his geography problem, in his history problem. I can only go so far. If he already studied more than I did, what can I do to help in that matter? No, I will be able to help maybe in preparation, maybe in searching something for him to read and to understand, but I will not be able to help him if I don't already have the power, the capability, the quality to help him or her in that specific situation. With God, with nature is the same thing. I will only be able to help other people with their lives, with their moral lives, with their spiritual lives, if I already achieved at least the same amount of spirituality, of morality than the other one. And so we meet the end of this chapter, but leads us asking ourselves, what happens then with this prayer? Is it just for those who were praying? Because Andrea here only speaks about himself, about Aniceto, about the ones who are praying. And what about the other ones? The mummies, as he keeps calling them. There's those spirits who are sleeping, right? Who are having the nightmares. What will happen to them? Is this prayer going to be effective to them? Is it not going to be effective? What's going to happen? And then that's how we end up this chapter, because we're going to talk about this and about much more in the next chapter, chapter 25 of the Messengers in Our Home. And I hope seeing you awaken here with us in our program. Have a great week, everyone. See you next time.
Thank you for listening to Kardec Radio, broadcasting live every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Email us and share your comments at www.kardecradio.com. Until next time, we wish you many blessings.